Landman is back this week with the 4th episode of Season 2, and as bleak as it might sound, this episode was solely centered around death. Whether it be the death of the man on the site when the episode opened up, Cami mourning the passing of Monty, or Tommy and the Norris family travelling to go to his mother's funeral. However, what we saw in this episode was that death can be the very thing that brings people together and can shape a future, as sad as it can be. This was shown most with Tommy and his father TL, and also Cooper and Ariana, with an ending that showed us that the Norris family was going to be changing forever, and Cami was turning to the shark that would consume MTex in a bite if he wanted to. Let's dive into this episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Landman Season 2 Episode 4 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The meaning of the episode. When it came to the deeper meaning of the episode, with it quite literally opening up with the death of the worker on the rig and somebody also ending things for themselves, it not only leaned into just how dangerous the industry can be that they're working in, but it felt like with the episode also being titled Dancing Rainbows, it was about looking for the joy in life when you can, because you never truly know when it's going to be snatched away. We also saw a focus being put on making the most of the fact that we get to hold on to the beauty of life and that we shouldn't waste it. This was brought to light with the fact that Tommy's father TL wasted his life being with Dottie, despite the fact that he was afraid of her. He spent his entire life with somebody that he was waiting to chase the very rainbows that they left behind when they were 17 years old. And now, in his 80s, with Dottie laid to rest, all he can think about was how he wasted it. This is why we ultimately saw Angela call up the care home and told them that TL was going to move in with Tommy. She saw how broken and upset TL was and that he'd paid for the mistakes that he made in life. But now he was just sitting there waiting to die, and she didn't want that. So with her wanting to bring him back, it showed that it's also never too late to start living again, especially when being around the people that you love. I also felt like this was something that was brought to light with Ariana and Cooper. What started with Cooper being on her front porch and not fighting for her, picking money over the chance of being with the woman that he truly loved, by the end of the episode, with Ariana going to the funeral of Dottie and meeting TL, she saw the type of family that Cooper came from. With none of them speaking about Dottie after the service, something that she wasn't used to, she saw that they weren't a strong family unit like the one that she came from was, hence why she was reluctant to just up and move her life when Cooper suggested it. But it was with that clarity and exposure to the family in a deeper way where we saw that Ariana understood that they were different and that there had to be a different level of understanding between the both of them. Cooper didn't rely on his family support system like she did, and I also think Ariana saw herself and Cooper in the story that TL was relaying about how in love he was with Dottie all of those years ago, prior to all of the issues that they eventually had. The same could also be said with Cami and the fact that she was still mourning Monty. She loved Monty deeply, and the shot of her in the empty bed and walking through the empty house summed up just how alone she felt. The scene of her breaking down at the end of the previous episode showed that she was going to feel that pain for a long time, but in this episode, the death of her husband was hanging over her like a dark cloud, and it was something that she felt like she needed to try and move on from. Hence why she wanted to sell the house, and also why she went to his grave and spoke with him. She brought him the cigar and also his favorite whiskey, and even spoke about how she was going to try and get out of the mess that he put all of them in. The finding of the 30th anniversary ring was something that also showed just how much Monty cared about her and only added to the pain that she was feeling. Life changing in an instant and having deadly life-changing consequences is something that's present in the industry that they all work in, and that core message was something that really did feel like it was at the heart of the episode. With Jarrell also losing his sight and being in a panicked state after having his bandages removed, that was another way that it got across that core message to us too. Cami's meeting with Dan Morrell. Amongst all of the grieving that was taking place in the episode, one of the most important moments that occurred in the story that's gonna drive the plot forward was the meeting that Cami ended up having with Dan Morrell. In the previous episode, they met and she saw that he was somebody that invested in the industry that she operated in, and with the money that they can't find that the insurance company paid out to Monty for the rig that was destroyed in the hurricane, they needed to find a way of getting back out there and getting the operation up and running. This is why she turned to Morrell, because she knew that he had the capital to be able to get that operation running. However, she doesn't truly know the type of person that he is. She only knows the kind, soft facade that he presents to her. Tommy has wanted to steer clear of Dan Morrell for a while, and with Cooper working with him, he's already got his fingers in a pie that's close to Tommy. If he then takes on the operation for the rig off the coast of Louisiana, he's basically going to have control over Tommy in more ways than one, which is something that he doesn't want in the slightest. Dan made an analogy about snakes being cannibals and eating other snakes. However, he wasn't prepared to double-cross Cami because he could see that she was in mourning and that the type of person that she truly was. However, he was prepared to speak with Tommy about the deal, even after agreeing to it with Cami. I think this is a power play move from Morrell because he knows how it's going to make Tommy feel and that MTex could wind up in a worse off position than what it currently is. Tommy still needs to speak with Cooper about the operation that he's got going on, so with Dan Morrell getting involved in MTex and Tommy needing to deal with Cooper, Angela, and now TL being in his home, I wouldn't be surprised if he kicked the bucket before the end of the season. My review of the episode. I thought this was a solid episode of the season. It was the longest by quite a fair chunk as it was comfortably over an hour, but I think it really needed it to get across the deeper meaning of the episode whilst also allowing us to lean into the characters a little bit more. It ultimately allowed us to find out their motivations and why they were acting the way that they were. I thought the scene in the diner for Dottie's funeral was one of the best in the season so far. We've barely heard much about Dottie other than it being alluded to that she was an alcoholic, but in hearing the trauma that Tommy endured after quite literally saving her life and why it is that he chose to essentially abandon his family at 14 years old, it cut deep and just painted a background that we didn't actually know about the character. It also showed the love that TL had for Dottie with the way that he was there for her even though she had her issues. He was mourning her long before she left, as he ultimately left the family too, but with him waiting for her to chase a rainbow that she left behind 60 years ago. It showed how a life can be wasted and slip by pretty quickly if you allow it to. A scene that I did also really like was the touching tender scene between Tommy and Ainsley. Usually, Ainsley's a bit of a surface-level, two-dimensional frustration, but in this episode, she served as the vessel which allowed Tommy to tell us about what happened to his sister, and how the death of her was what drove his mother to the bottle because she was afraid to love again. It showed that she was human, she had her flaws, and she basically lived her life in fear. It was actually quite upsetting. One thing I do think I am missing from this season of the show is the likes of Tommy being on the sites, and even the drama that's occurring with the workers. It's very family-oriented at the moment, which I don't mind, but I would like to see the story with Dan Morrell pick up just a little bit more, and it feel like there'd be something at stake. At the moment, it's like everything is just kinda going along and there's a slight threat in the background, so I'm hoping that we're gonna get that in the next few episodes. Personally, I wasn't really a fan of Rebecca's story in this episode. It was just kind of thrown in here and there and felt a little bit inconsequential, but I do wonder if this new mysterious British character that we met on the plane is going to tie into the wider story in some way. What I really liked about the ending was that when Tommy went to get TL from the assisted living home and watched that sunset for the final time, he sat down next to him, ultimately putting him on his level for the first time in the show. Usually, when he watched the sunset with him, he'd be standing, but this showed that he was on the same level from a mental and physical perspective and that their relationship was going to be different moving forward. Next week marks the halfway point of the season, and it's been a great one so far, but I'm definitely ready to see the action kicking into gear now, so I hope it does. So, there you have it, Landman Season 2 Episode 4 Ending Explained.